leverage our natural resources for recreational purposes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, recreation is important to the town. If this particular piece of property is suitable for recreation, and I can go into some of the criteria a little bit later. The master plan, which is an expression of what the town wants, should dictate that recreational use should be a major priority. Lindsay, do you want to add anything?
I was wondering if there was a question first or just to jump in. Yeah. So recreational use, preserving our natural land, preserving forests, just keeping the rural character of the town was really important. Not overdeveloping. And yet there's a juxtaposition. So it was also expressed that we do need to work on where it is responsible and where it makes sense to add more housing and help build out the tax base. So there was a couple of, there's always that dichotomy. There's different forces.
So Lindsay, how much land is set aside for recreation now in the town?
Oh, I can't answer that. I don't know.
I'm gonna venture a guess, not a guess, but I don't have the number firmly emblazoned in my brain, but my recollection is that somewhere in the 35 to 40% of the town is conserved land at this point.
And yeah, I'm not the one to ask. I think there's a conservation groups that can do that. They can answer that better. But it's depending on how you're defining recreation. So, I mean, there's different types of areas. So there's a lot of Enfield that cannot be developed, so will always be. So, and so like we've got game lands and, pretty much all of Shaker Mountain and stuff that are, preserved, which is great. There's the whole backside, which is on the 89 corridor, which is not, developable. So again, will be able to be preserved and is used for recreational purposes, where there's trails and things that are cut into it. So, and all of that counts. And then, so there's different, and then of course you have things like the rail trail, which is considered recreation, and ball fields. So they're very different, types of topographies. So. But yeah, I do believe it's a pretty significant, I think, numbers. At least it's definitely a third, if not 40%.
If I may add to that.
Oh.
The Conservation Commission produced a natural resources inventory in 2021. And in that inventory, it estimates that there is 46% of Enfield conserved in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
However, the Conservation District, according to the ordinances, allows people to build one house per 10 acres. Fortunately, as was mentioned, most of that area is above 25% slope, which the state will not support construction on. The problem is, as I see it, most of that recreation area is on the east side of 89, not on the west side. So although the people on Methodist Hill pay taxes, they have a relatively small amount, if any, recreation facility that's close to their homes. Whereas here on the east side of Enfield, you've got Harris Brook Trail, you've got Grafton Pond Trail to Boys Camp, you've got the Grafton Pond Trail from Boys Camp to Crystal Lake, you've got Coal Pond Trail, you've got the Half Mile Trail, you've got the Smith Pond Trail. So there is a lot more recreational facilities on the east side of 89 than there is on the west side. And yet the people on the west side are part of Enfield. They pay property taxes here as well. And the balancing of recreational facilities is not, in my estimation, equitable.
Thank you, Dr. Tice, right? Thank you. Questions for Ms. Smith and Mr. Frack from the committee?
You talk about recreation, do you have anything particularly in mind?
My understanding is that that particular piece of property is about what, 99 acres? 100 acres. And, most of it, as Dr. Theis says, is not developable due to its terrain. That kind of leaves it as, what do you do with it? Well, hiking trails, availability for hunters, should it not be posted? You know, all sorts of outdoor recreation, mountain biking. There's a lot of possibilities that could be done on that lot, given my understanding of it. And that's certainly way beyond the purview of the master plan task force to decide what is the best recreational use. You know, we can offer an opinion that most of that 90 or 100 acres is not suitable for development. And perhaps, you know, there could be some sort of a compromise where a few lots are carved out right along Methodist Hill Road, and those could be developed for, you know, 3-4 houses. And the remainder of the lot could be used for recreation of one sort or another. And again, I'm not in a position to recommend exactly what sort of recreational use would be most appropriate. Another thing that I feel should be taken into account is whether that lot is contiguous with other recreational uses. Is there a trail system that it could connect to? What are its implications in terms of wildlife management? Does it form or could it form a wildlife corridor between 2 points if it were not developed? Those are the kinds of things that I think you should be taking into consideration when you make your final decision.
On the backside, you have Patch Farm,
Mhm.
and both sides on both sides on, you know, whatever you want to call it, are personal residences.
Mhm.
So you're not gonna connect any additional trail system.
So there's no contiguous space that goes to Whaleback
No,
on there, none.
No,
So I'm a little curious, when you do set up to do the recreation part of the master plan,
Mhm.
are you gonna take the Dr. Thesis,
Inventory,
sorry?
the inventory?
Well, are you gonna take his point that there is very little recreation on that side of 89?
So when we set up to do those types of things, what our job is as the master plan is to ask the questions of the town, not to, so yeah, so there is information, and we'll look at other committees that have information. It's not to lay out an exact working like directive, but to say, what is the ultimate feelings of, you know, the predominant ones. So it's not gonna please everybody. Our next steps, and right now we're working on some other like funding and things. So the next chapters are on hold, are on pause for a little bit, but we'll be working with conservation. So we did not do that piece yet as part of land use, recreation, history, etc. And really, it's about, actually, I can't remember the exact ones. I didn't brush up before I came here. But our job is just to ask the questions of the people of the town, not to, and different groups and entities, and then take all of that into a report. So what I can tell you right now, from what we found from doing the master plan and looking at land use and looking at the overall sentiments of Enfield, is that the predominant views were to preserve our rural character, by not overdeveloping. There's a big fear of, high rises and building out in every single possible, space. By preserving our rural character, preserving and protecting our wildlife. And that we do value our outdoor recreation. But that hasn't been completely defined yet as to what that is. But that we value our green spaces and in our blue spaces, as if you will go for the lakes and whatnot. And so, and that is what does, and wanting to make sure that those are, healthy. It doesn't do us any good to preserve them and then not, have good, ecological practices and whatnot, but that is an overall sentiment. And I think it was really preserving the rural character is how that truly came out. Not wanting to turn into a city or, an overpopulated area that stresses the land.
Are there thoughts about clustering development around the villages?
Yep, and
Yes.
that's part of rural character.
Yes,
Is clustering development around and also places where there's already amenities. So if we were to add in housing, and, I know that there's differing opinions, individually, but where we already have sewer and water, that are not being utilized to their full extent, versus trying to constantly tap into aquifers and dig wells and, things that are actually, so yeah, clustering development into places where there's already, infrastructure versus clear cutting and cutting down things, especially. And that's part of what the overall sort of definition of rural character.
I think one thing that I would add is maintaining the visual landscape is an important part of the concept of maintaining the rural character of the town.
Yeah.
And I think what people mean when they say the visual landscape is unbroken forests, no houses on or near the top of ridge lines. And, as Lindsay said, generally trying to concentrate any new development, trying to direct it towards the village centers and take advantage of existing municipal infrastructure, water and sewer and roads and sidewalks.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what people are asking for in terms of housing nowadays. 20, 30, 40 years ago, people came up, myself included, and we wanted our 10 acres and we're gonna plunk our house right in the middle of it because we didn't want to talk to our neighbors at all, ever. And I think that's changed.
Antisocial.
I think that's changed and people want to live in neighborhoods. Parents don't want to have to shuttle their kids 20 miles into town just to go to the library or, hang out with their friends. And as people like myself grow older, the concept of maintaining our 10 acres becomes more and more formidable.
That's true. If the committee's finished asking, are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions of Mr. Kraft and Ms. Lindsay? And if you do, please state your name for the minutes. No? Do we have anybody online?
No.
No. Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right.
Well,
That was-
by the way, I would like to say I love the master plan.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
nicely done.
We would like to get to the next chapters. We gotta work that out.
Well, it's good
Because
to
they're
have
important
them.
and, you know, I know that there's some folks that are, there's a lot of good sentiments that started in the land use and the big stuff, and we want to tease out these exact questions that you're asking a little bit are part of that next piece is teasing out a little bit more definition.
Good job.
But I think again, the overall piece is rural character, and that doesn't mean always farmland, it means wildness, you know? And our, and our forests and those things, and if they can be used recreationally, but it's okay if they just also exist. And they don't have to necessarily have a human footprint on them at all points in time, so.
But they should be reasonably well managed. I mean, you know, if you've got a forest, you know, you want to do some selective cutting every few years to maintain a healthy forest.
Yep, we're dealing with that right now. On my
Well,
our
thanks.
property.
Thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, now we were going to hear from the Recreation Commission. Kevin spoke to us last week quite a bit.
Hello, I'm not Brian. My name's Matt Young, live on Lock Haven, and I am the chair of the Rec Commission.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm Emily Curtis, Vice Chair of the Recreation Commission.
So you had mentioned
Change your hair.
that Kevin had talked to you last week a little bit about what our thoughts were on the property use.
He spoke quite nicely. You should be proud of him.
We are. But basically, yeah, it's actually very similar to what was just said. From our understanding about, to give rough numbers, 25% of it is actually developable, and then 75% is not. We like the idea of taking the 75% and turning it into bike trails, hiking trails, and a place where some outdoor activity can happen. But we also wanted to throw out, if it is at all possible, to spare the taxpayers a little bit using the funds that are generated from the sale of the remaining 25% that is developable to pay for the development of those trails. And that's kind of where we're at with that. There's no real business around that area, so that would be the main attraction to that area. To say that it's a recreational area that's gonna fund other ancillary revenue for the town is not really feasible, but if we're going to choose to use it for rec purposes, that's what we were thinking.
No, very much exactly the same, you know, kind of even mirroring what master plan was reflecting on, and that, you know, the goal really in a lot of ways is to try to bring more to our local businesses, but kind of where it's located, the businesses that are the most convenient and accessible are going to be two gas stations. And so it's hard to see where those pieces really kind of give back to Enfield and in those greater pieces. And then there was also concern, there was made mention of possible like water runoff. And I know that that conversation is taking place in other areas of the town. It's a private roadway, but just kind of the way that the water runoff is affecting other residents and things of that nature. That was one of the things that kind of keeps sticking in my head of, you know, if any portion of that was developed or if the town owned it, what would be on the town for any of those pieces or aspects to potentially be involved in trying to manage that water runoff? What would that look like? So that's kind of one of the current conversations in my head that is kind of something that I would definitely bring forward in that aspect. But yeah, trying to understand that, you know, what is the value add, and then, you know, really wanting to push for people to go from Methodist Hill all the way to come into the center of town would really be a concerted effort to try to draw people, and you're having them drive through another town to get to the other part of our town. So it's a little bit more challenging and difficult. It does not mean it's impossible. And, you know, certainly something like a biking trail would be an attraction because there aren't a lot of those, you know, that I'm aware of that are really available. But then, of course, that brings in all the liability and all.
Well,
those questions, and you
89
never know.
really did a job on Enfield.
No,
No,
It was,
It's open.
89's I see 89 as a problem.
I will put that out for the committee because that's been told a lot. There is no liability if we turn it into biking trails or something like that. If it's open for public use and it's public land, then we're immune from liability.
That's good to know.
it's,
That's very good to know. I have another, as long as you're there and you're a captive audience.
actually, I just want, I apologize. I just want to take one moment. This is Amy, Stewart, who is also a member of the Recreation Commission.
Oh, good.
She has joined us as well, so I don't mean to
No,
interrupt,
that's
but also
fine.
redirect so that.
No, I just wanna say, will you please get a speed limit on the rail trail from the park to Pillsbury Street?
We don't own the rail trail.
Yeah, we don't have, there's nothing, no
No, it's,
recreation, not even town, no
David does it,
nothing.
but you can ask.
I've asked.
I've
There's
asked.
only one person who is assigned to maintaining that. And trust me, the guy is overworked.
Well, then you add
Yes.
to it the actual enforcement. There's no
Yeah, there's no
jurisdiction
way.
for people.
We are glad to have you here. What would you like to say?
Probably everything I would say has already been said, but we're excited to hear of the opportunity for the development of this land. Potentially, for recreation use, because we can never have enough recreation.
Where would the funding come from to develop it? Or to develop trails, et cetera?
So, as I said at the beginning, if at all possible, from this revenue generated from the sale of the 25% of land that is developable for housing,
Okay, that's one option, but what we said we wanted it all to be.
then we kind of talked about that and did not see a need at the moment. Just because if you're gonna spend money on recreation in this town, there's other places to spend it right now. We have existing parks that need some help. We have other avenues in this town for recreation that could use some infusion of money. I don't wanna, our suggestion, I guess, if I'm not speaking out of turn, because we did talk about it a little bit, is if we're gonna dedicate money to something, let's dedicate money to things that need to be fixed, if at all possible, because market's pretty good right now. If we can generate the funds necessary to develop these trails from the revenue of that sale of the 25% of land that's developable, that's what we would want to see. Otherwise, I don't know if we necessarily need it as a recreation department responsibility to create another park.
Well, and I think too, part of that was also that of the portion that could be sold, it could potentially be, I think, 3 lots, if I remember correctly. I don't remember.
It really hasn't been determined. 3 to
Okay.
5 probably.
Okay, so 3
I
to
was
5,
gonna
but
say
if,
five has been mentioned, but no more than 5.
right,
Because in that zoning, they all have to have a 250 feet on the road. And that's all you can have on Methodist Hill Road.
Well, and it's all kind of looking at the land and speculating what could be there. None of it's been definitively defined.
No.
right. So I guess to carry forward with that idea though, is that the sale of that land to be developed in some shape or form could benefit the town by the tax revenue of it, in those pieces. That was one piece that was discussed.
Shall we
but-
tell her?
Yeah, don't.
It'll add a 1/25th of a cent,
It's a small amount, but all development adds a little bit and helps.
just not much. You think it'll add a whole lot more to the taxes and it doesn't.
No, and we understand that because we have a lot of similar reflections from a recent go around with discussing about Johnston Drive. And so it's not the same conversation by any means, but there's definitely reflections and things that we have learned from the first one, but it's a very similar thought pattern for recreation in the idea of we have things that we would really like to put our time and money into in front of us at the ready, trying to be in that process. And so to add another large piece that it would really be a large piece of work to develop those trails. I'm certainly, by no means in the understanding of what it would take or what kind of money would be involved. And, you know, that would be a whole nother venture to try to figure out even what cost valuation that may have to develop that, in that area. So, I mean, I guess without going too far into the weeds of really trying to get prices and understanding how much that costs, these are just kind of the spitfire ideas of.
Right, one suggestion regarding that is look for volunteers. And I'd be one to be right up there in front. I would, I mean, if need be, and I think there's a lot of people in this community that would jump in and assist with developing those trails and, you know, volunteering their time and, you know, equipment, you know, I got a chainsaw, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, doesn't necessarily have to be a big budget to do that. It could be mostly done by volunteers.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I'm an avid hiker, biker, snowshoe, I do it all. 100 acres is not a lot of land.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have biking trails there, realistically. It's, I mean, I wouldn't go there to bike because it's just like, what am I do, go around a loop 100 times? I mean, it's, and it's just my opinion as far as, you know, biking trails, but I think hiking and, you know, snowshoeing trails and cross country, you get multiple use for that. I think it'd be a great use of it. My concern is, you know, is my thought is like, okay, let's say you sell part of it. Well, now all of a sudden you're taking 100 acres and now you really cut it up to be a really small property to develop. I mean, am I gonna go there to hike a half-mile trail? Probably not. You have 100 acres and you got, you know, I'm trying to envision in my mind how many miles of trails you could have in 100 acres. But,
Again, as Emily was saying, we're kind of in the same position as we were with the Johnston Drive. It's there. It was suggested for recreational use, but we feel that we have other things we should be paying attention to right now. And I hear Dr. who's last name? I hear that there's not stuff over there for these taxpayers, and I agree with that. But there are things much, much closer to the center of town that do need attention and money. And those do produce ancillary revenue that may in the future provide funds that could help us with a different project somewhere down the line. But right now in the recreational world, there's other things we need to be focusing on. Unless we can figure out a way to fund the development of that land with the sale.
right.
If I may intervene, excuse me. I think the Conservation Commission itself has a potentially significant input to that recreational area, if that's what the committee decides to do with it. There are grants available. We have already established a trail master to take care of the trails here in Enfield. And extending his activities to a trail that would be developed on Methodist Hill is not going to be a great undertaking. We also have a budget that is sufficient to support some of this, and as a conservation commission, we could write grants to obtain the information for that particular purpose. So I think that there's more of a collaboration, if you will, between the Recreation Commission and the Conservation Commission necessary. And I don't think that the Recreation Commission need to assume that they're going to have to handle the burden of the economic aspect, developing trails there, should that property be established for recreation.
Well, it's not also, I mean, when we consider, so recreation wise, I mean, we've looked at multiple different aspects of what things cost in a budgetary sense for, you know, even when talking about Johnston Drive, we discussed what does a parking area look like? How much does it cost to build in X number of parking spots? If you want to make it accessible, it has to meet this level of compliance, and it has to, you know, the roadway to that needs to meet this level of compliance. And so it's not even just based off of, you know, a trail development per se, but recreationally, we look at all of those pieces. What is the signage going to look like? Are we going to have trash receptacles there? You know, how is this going to be kind of managed and, you know, reviewed? And is there going to be added burden on our DPW? These are all other pieces of the town and municipal burden that would potentially be impacted to be considered for budgetary things.
Well, because of 89, Methodist Hill is a problem for services. You know, if you need a fire truck. You need the police.
Oh, we make it up there, don't you worry.
Oh, I know you do, but it takes a while. Yeah,
Because we're coming from,
Well,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
back down.
Enfield's what, 41 miles across or something?
yeah, and it probably takes about 40 minutes to get from one point to the other. And that's not even,
but it always has.
We like the idea of
Yeah.
a rec area in that area, we do, but when you talk about the money part, that our priorities lie elsewhere.
and the idea is not to try to cut people off on that side of town, you know, it's not like, it's hard because I empathize with wanting to have those opportunities literally in your backyard. But it doesn't always, for it to meet the needs of a few and then spend a lot of time and energy to try to bring in more, but then actually have no real, there is no kind of give on that other end. There is nothing that kind of, it doesn't help revive some of our businesses. It doesn't help, like, it doesn't bring in those pieces that I see connecting, that I personally see, that's even outside of the committee, that I see personally connecting to the pieces that I have seen expressed by just other areas of town.
Well, I think that one of the things that the recreation committee could think about is, whaleback. They put in a disc golf.
They didn't put it in.
They did
No,
not put
Angus
that
put
in.
it in. My next door neighbor put it in, but like,
Just
um,
associated with volunteers. I was one of them.
yeah,
Yeah,
is,
I was on volunteer work.
Enfield residents are welcome at the Shaker Museum at no cost. So.
they are.
Oh, yeah. Are you sure about
Since
that?
when?
Yeah, I just found that out when I went into the Shaker
Really?
Museum.
Yes, I'm sure
But
of
there's
it.
nothing that tells you that unless you walk in.
That came from.
Unless you
when-
walk in there and say, I'm an
that
Enfield resident
was
because you
one
know
of
to
the
say it.
Settlements when
Anyways.
the Historians of America owed $80,000 in taxes to the town of Enfield. And that's one of the things that happened, is that Enfield residents are welcome at the museum. You might make a deal with Whaleback. They might not let them in for free, but they might cut the prices.
They already do.
Do they?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Enfield
'cause,
residents actually get a pretty good deal at Whaleback.
yeah, there are a lot of people that use Whaleback, so it's
Whaleback
not
is
that
also
there
a
are
501c3,
no
which is a
recreation.
different type of
opportunities.
operation than a municipal
Anyway,
operation.
Anybody else, anybody in the public would like to speak to the recreation people?
It's the green.
Hmm?
Hearing nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
great.
coming.
Did we get the recap correct, Kevin?
You get credit for showing up.
Thanks a
We're gonna sit
lot.
around and use the room after too.
Oh, you have a meeting, don't you?
We do.
Oh, darn, I was looking-
Mr. Kelleher,
Yes.
would you like to come and talk to us? We really appreciate you taking the time to come, but I know that you have a lot of Burke Lane that you're thinking about putting a house on.
Yes, well, I'm a general contractor and, basically build custom homes. I recently, last 2, 3 years ago, I finished the, latest new home in, Fieldstone Ridge. And I just recently purchased the last lot available in first Fieldstone Ridge, which is at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'm in the process of marketing that with a house. As a developer in Enfield, I can tell you, there aren't many buildable lots in town. And I've gone by this particular piece of land, I think, an average 2, 3 times a week. So you get a job done in Plainfield, so I'm cutting across. I was asked to come here, I haven't done a lot of research on the land. Did look at the tax map, it's 100 acres, and from what I've gathered today, that 25% of that is probably developable. And from my observation of land, I see that as developing the lots, available lots on the roadside.
Yes, it was
Mm.
Miss Jones that wanted to be sure that we had a developer come and talk to us. Along with
There
the
is-
recreation people,
There is,
so it's in your corner.
I wouldn't even contemplate trying to get into that large parcel to put up a development like Fieldstone Ridge with an internal road. It'll never pay for itself. The infrastructure will bankrupt the developer, just like it's done in every other development that's gone up in the Upper Valley. Eagle Ridge, Fieldstone Ridge, Kings Grant, Rock Ridge. The initial developer went in there with big plans of putting internal roads and drainage. By the time the infrastructure is done, they're bankrupt.
Mhm.
Methodist Hill, that 25% that's developed is right on the roadside. So basically, you'd have to determine, the town would have to determine what's gonna be the minimum lot size,
10
road
acres.
frontage.
It's 5 acre zoning.
It's 5 acres, so you're dealing with 250 feet of road frontage.
It
So-
can't be more than 5.
So you got 5 lots. You got 5 lots with a fantastic western view with minimal amount of clearing. Value wise, me as a prospective buyer, I wouldn't value them less than $200,000 a lot.
Really?
So if you can get 5 lots, you have potential of picking up $1 million in revenue. Plus, anyone building up there, right now, cost of new construction is running $400 to $500 a square foot. So now you're looking at a 2,500 square foot house and a $200,000 lot, you're in the $1 million range, evaluation wise. So you've got a potential of $5 million in valuation added to the tax.
People gonna spend that much money to live on Methodist Hill Road?
Right.
You don't think they will?
The lot I have, at the end of the cul-de-sac at Fieldstone Ridge, it's currently on the market, the vacant lot for 2.25 with, a proposed, 2,500 square foot house, which, if someone decided on the house that I've got planned that meets the same style within the neighborhood, you're pushing up over $1 million. The last house I did was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Paul Bianco's, he's here, he's the owner of the house. He can tell you, what he paid for it. And that house is about 3,600 square feet. And if I had to build it today, it'd be well over $1 million to replace what he has.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, well, that's
You
what
have-
you wanted to know.
I'm so grateful that you have come
And then,
and filled us in on the reality.
and that's just, your 5 roadside lots. That leaves you, that's without having a surveyor go in there and divvy up those lots. You still end up with 75 acres for all kinds of recreation.
And we were looking at, it was Alan Strickland who came and told us about the land, that there's no way to develop any place except along the road because of the
Well,
slopes.
Yeah,
It isn't
I mean,
quite 25%, but there's slopes.
the cost to develop, to do a development within that 100 acres would be astronomical. And I just don't see a developer coming up here and trying to even attempt it.
But you certainly.
Roadside
with the
lots.
Geography or geology, you certainly can't build workforce housing there.
What's that?
Workforce housing.
No, these would be single family custom homes.
For all those homeless doctors.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
Building anything new. I've got a 6-unit apartment building that just started on Main Street. When people talk about workforce housing, you can't do it. By the time you get the thing done, you gotta get $2,400 a month rent.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
And you back that off from 8 to 6.
What's that?
You started out with, there were gonna be 8 apartments and now there's gonna be 6, right?
I started out with 5,
You started with 5.
and then what I wanted is a full road cut so I could have parking underneath, and the state wouldn't give me the road cut, so without an internal road, and the lot's not big enough or wide enough to have an internal road. So then I cut it down to 6 units, but 3 up and 3 down, so half the lot is the building and the other half is 8 parking spaces.
Yeah, I've been watching the guy dig the hole while my dog walks by. Anything you want to say, Tom?
Maybe just for the recreation committee to understand that the sale cannot be, for profit for the town. So the $1 million is not, you're probably thinking, it
Whoever,
doesn't have it,
the town took it
It
for
goes-
taxes,
right?
and all that the town can recover is the money that was owed in taxes.
And
Anything beyond that goes back to the previous owner.
yeah,
So to think that you could get $1 million for the town,
There's statute of limitations on that?
Nope.
So it could be 75 years from now and the descendants of the people who once owned the property would have.
They'll walk to their mailbox and open it for a $700,000 check.
I want
when they
that
don't pay their
job.
bills.
Not a bad return.
No, right? That's what I was thinking. I was like, dang.
I was flabbergasted when I heard that,
Sure.
but,
I mean, it makes sense. Fair is fair.
oh.
I'm not sure
Yes,
that's
Harry,
fair.
Mr. Drinkwater?
Because I've always been kind of intrigued by this. Does the town know of an approachable heir to the property? Is there a deeded person who would say, I'm the one who's gonna receive
I
it?
have no clue.
But it enters into this conversation, what
Yes, it does.
is the sale value going to a person? Or is it gonna be put up in court so that it might someday be inherited by the town? It's not clear to me where this might end up.
Well, all I know is that 100 acres was taken for taxes. I don't know if the owner is alive or in the country, let alone in the state, or anything about it, because that wasn't our charge as a committee.
I tried to find him.
Excuse me?
I tried to find him following the original land chart that Julie Huntley gave me. The last address that I have for him is in Massachusetts. And I called there and nobody knew him. So the descendants of this person, whose name at the moment I can't remember, doesn't seem to be around. Property was originally owned by Methodist Hill Realty Trust, which I assume is a, I should want to say a pseudonym for the family, because I called the Secretary of State here in New Hampshire and asked her if there had ever been a business by the name of Methodist Hill Realty Trust established in the state. And she said, no, there's never been anything like that. So this was not an official business. And the person who ran the property and originally lost it seems to have disappeared.
That's interesting. That's gonna make it really hard to market, isn't it, Mr. Kelleher? Yeah.
Now, originally, I was told that there was a statute of limitations, and that was one of the reasons that the town was taking its time and putting it up for sale. I was told by one of the members of the Board of Selectmen that if the town waited until the statute of limitations ran out, then they could take all of the sale price, not just the owed property tax. If they sold the property before the statute of limitations ran out, then they would have to return to the former owner, if they could find them, anything beyond what the property tax lien amounted to.
Right.
But you told me that there is no statute of limitations, that it can run on forever.
From my
I don't know
understanding.
that they,
my conversations with Ed, that's what I understood. I could have completely misunderstood him. So,
My-
I mean,
I
Well, my
think there
understanding is
might have
that
to
3
be a
years.
statute of limitations because of the situation you just mentioned. Yes, Mr. Vinco?
Yes, my understanding was, and I'm not going to discuss
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is that there is a statute of limitations. It's 3 years, and I believe it comes up in May of 2024.
then I'm wholeheartedly not afraid to admit, I could be wrong. But yeah, no, I didn't know that, so, I mean, that could.
Sounds like some more research.
That may be why we are a committee right now.
Yeah, can we put it in the meeting minutes to have a follow-up with Ed?
Yeah.
To find out if there is indeed statute of limitations?
Yeah.
That's, the 3 years is why, you know, a lot of towns will take the inventory and they won't auction it off until after the 3 years. Cause then the original owner has no recourse.
But that means that this land passed to Enfield only a year and a half or 2 years ago.
That's based on
So,
taxes, how long they haven't paid taxes.
We don't know how much the taxes owed were either.
Probably wasn't much because I was looking at the deed refers to it as a woodlot, so I'm sure it was in current use,
but I think it was 40,000.
40,000.
Well, it was. Yeah, it was like 44 to 50,000. I think we
Yeah.
talked about that last.
But that's over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Well, we just didn't pay taxes on it.
The taxes have to be in delinquency for 7 years before the town can actually claim ownership.
Yeah.
Take over it for taxes. So they hadn't paid taxes in a long time.
Yes, Emily.
So I just want to add that as a committee, I feel like it would be prudent for us to have the information to know, like, if there's some kind of like 10-year timeline as to the future aspect of this, I mean, that could have a big impact on how we would propose information to you and what we would propose. So
Well,
it
Mr.
feels like
Kelleher
there's more
says-
information for
Yep.
us to receive as a commission to actually be able to give feedback based off of what we've heard. now.
Does
Well,
the
Mr.
Methodist-
Kelleher said it's 3 years and I'll bet he knows.
Okay.
From being a
Does the Methodist
developer.
Property Use Committee have a timeline as to when action will be taken on this land? There a deadline for the decision?
It's not hard and fast. Our goal was to, by the end of the year, to present to the select board our recommendation.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like more research needs to be done in terms of the tax law.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
suggest we put in this, because I definitely want to know that.
Yeah,
before.
'cause-
Yeah, it's huge.
I
And
mean,
I'm glad we had this discussion today, because this.
one
kinda
answer
came up.
means I do get to sit here and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be able to.
Well, I think the committee was formed because the select board doesn't want to do it.
It might also, just a suggestion, be prudent to have a developer, I don't know if this gentleman would be able to give you an estimate on it, but to get a ballpark estimate on developing hiking and biking trails on the remaining 75%-ish that can't be developed for housing. Cause that'll give you a ballpark number of what we would need to have to do that.
So,
So we can sit here and suggest all we want, that we wanna do trails and all of this, but if we have no idea how much that process costs.
You could ask John Morton in Thetford and
yeah,
he'd tell
John
you.
Morton, or I'm so curious about the green space in Dorchester that they've been, I think that's an individual person who's been working on it for, they're biking trails and,
Green Woodlands?
is that what it's?
Yeah, it's privately owned.
Yeah.
They open it to the public. It's like
Right.
50,000 acres. It's unbelievable.
But people drive from everywhere
Oh,
to
yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
And
I would drive from
There's like
here to get
30
to 20,000 acres,
there's
but
like-
if it's not 100,
No,
then
it's like
that's a
50
different
miles.
conversation.
50 miles of biking, it's like 30 miles of room cross-country trail.
Well, we still have
But he would
minutes
know,
to.
he would know what it
so-
takes to develop something like that.
Yeah.
He's only done it in the last 5 years.
Well, let's see what we can
I was
do
gonna
to
say,
get
brought
more
this gentleman
information
to get
about
an estimate
development.
on the property that can be developed. Might be prudent to get the other half of that too.
Yeah.
Your meeting starts at 6:30, right?
I guess that all depends on you.
I want to say thank you, Mr. Kelleher, for
You've
coming.
been
It's
so
much
informative.
appreciated.
Hopefully I had something worth value.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, you started a real discussion here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Bill, well, before we get to the minutes, has the public got anything else they want to say? Outcries of pain and rage, complaints? Yeah,
Well, at one time, there was supposed to be a forester, a wetland scientist, to look at that property, to evaluate its usefulness for recreation and its, limitations to development.
we talked to the forester at our first meeting.
Do you have a report from him yet? Written
We do
report?
have a paragraph from
We
him.
have a paragraph, but it's in the minutes. Which are
And what
the-
about a wetland scientist? Look for endangered species, vernal pools, things that would definitely constrict the availability of development.
No, there's an old, there's a creek bed, but I think it's seasonal.
And all we've heard about, wetlands is from Ellen Strickland, I think.
Well, he was going to look for vernal pools at one time because he did it for our natural resources inventory. But to me, that kind of information would be useful, whether the land is put up for sale or whether it is not, because it would delineate the extent to which the individual who is trying to develop it would have a difficulty with the Department of Environmental Services because of the characteristics of the property. And, to me, at least, it's worthwhile to have something that is, an honest representation of the geography and climate and characteristics of the property if you're planning on, recommending selling it.
Well,
Thank you.
I would actually like to add to that point of having that information supplied to members that you are requesting information from, so that they have all of that information available to them. You know, if we had a topographical map, maybe we would have had some different thoughts or understandings. All that we could go off of was, well, most of it isn't buildable, or there were a lot of kind of generalizations and not, you know, I can look up the GIS tax map, I can see that, but as an individual, but having that information available to, you know, to groups that you are looking for opinions from would be very beneficial.
So the GIS map, I think, is all we've been supplied with so far.
Well, GIS maps aren't accurate. Okay, well, thank you all. We're gonna go over these two sets of minutes and approve them and get out of here. What do you think?
I agree.
Okay. You're welcome to stay and listen to us approve the minutes or not. Okay, for the September 19th minutes are on the floor.
I
Mr.
move-
Morris sent us a corrected edition with some red print in it. Correcting the names. We didn't totally correct the names. It was Hinshaw and Morbury. For the names. And he didn't correct that, so. That needs
It's
to be-
corrected. Oh, no, he corrected it wrong.
He's corrected it wrong. Peggy Newberry
No, he
is,
corrected it right. He took out the ER.
it's not Newberry. It's Morbury.
Really?
I changed it. I got it changed on here.
Have you got it changed?
Yeah, so
Okay, so,
that changes then.
all right, and Hinshaw,
Hinshaw's corrected.
okay. And is Jean Hinshaw right?
Yeah, yes, it's Gene. He had it as Gina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newberry, okay, what do you have at Newberry? You have Morbury?
Of Newberry, so what we got off of the GIS map last time.
I think it's more, well, whatever. Okay.
Can you check that?
The chair
I think it
will
is over here.
entertain
Yeah,
a
I'll check it.
motion to approve the corrected minutes.
I do that.
Okay. How about you, Tom?
I second it.
All in favor?
We're so pathetic.
Okay, now the October 3rd minutes. I think they're pretty good, actually. Except on the schedule, we've seen Mr. Kelleher, which was nice. The Upper Valley Land Trust didn't come. And Kevin Marker spoke for the Recreation Committee. November 21st will be an in-person public meeting, and we decided not to have the meeting on election day. That didn't make much sense. November 7th, was that right?
We've got a lot of work to do. If we're gonna have a public meeting, I mean,
On November 21st?
yeah,
You think we ought to meet the 7th on election day?
well, no, I'm just thinking that we need to talk amongst ourselves in the committee.
We
I
need
mean,
to
to
do
have a
that.
public meeting.
We've got,
About all the
yeah,
information.
we have a meeting to do that on December 5th.
But didn't you just say the public meeting's gonna be on the 21st of November?
Yeah, when everybody's invited if they wanna come, but we haven't had a whole lot of attendance. What are you thinking, Tom?
Well, I still would like to see Upper Valley Land Trust. I'd like to, I don't know why.
And have we ever had the Conservation Committee come? No, they didn't come. I mean,
Dr.
Jerry came.
Tice was here, he said what he wanted to say, I think.
Okay, we should have probably asked him if there was anything else he wanted to add.
We did, I did.
Okay.
See the chair of the Conservation Commission?
I heard he turned in a resignation letter.
They
I
what?
think that December 5th, I don't think conservation will come, but if he does, we'll talk to him, but then we're gonna ask everybody to leave and we're
called me
gonna
on
sit
the
and talk
tele-
among
he called-
ourselves.
But he called me on the phone and said that he hasn't been invited.
Who?
So, Jerry,
Incorrect.
I'm just saying what he
I-
called me
I
on the phone.
I sent invitations to him. There's stuff going on in the conservation committee that's probably causing answers he's producing.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I thought I wanted to be on that committee. Oh, no, I thought I wanted to be on that committee and I went to a meeting and he took the minutes and approved them.
Well, I'm gonna let you guys know, in the minutes, I did not put that he represented the conservation committee tonight. I put he represented himself because.
Yeah, that would be
Oh,
my
okay.
interpretation.
Okay,
Just so we're on the same page.
no, that's fine.
But I
it's
think
gotta
that
be
has to be
correct.
cleared up. I mean, somebody else must be on the committee who has strong feelings, or
Yeah.
maybe not. And I think Emily's right. We need to have wetland maps. We need to have maps that truly represent the,
We had
acreage.
at the meeting.
but I think they were GIS maps.
We had the forester, remember, he came and talked to us and he told us what was wet and what wasn't. Remembering that we abut on Patch Orchards, which is a commercial operation. And that there's a big development across the street. I'm not sure we need much more information about that 100 acres to decide what to do with it.
Yeah,
I don't think the town's gonna spend the money to have that done.
that's what I was just gonna say.
Unless,
But we've been told
Right.
that the town did not wanna get off the bill of a surveyor.
Well,
At some point, he said that.
if it's going to be sold,
Then it
or
has to be
if there
surveyed.
will be lots, it will have to be surveyed by a certified surveyor. And that's up to the town, that's not up to us. Our mission is to figure out from what we've heard from all these people,
And
what
that,
would be the best use of the land.
right, and I think we need to meet before that 21st, or maybe not, maybe I'm,
What do you think, Tom? You wanna meet on the 7th? It's election day.
Yeah, well,
And
no,
it's, you're supposed to meet at 5:30 and the polls are open and all the
I just
officials,
think it's,
so what? But that's what they told us, and I think it's because these guys need the room.
I know, should we vacate and go into,
No, you need to close your session here because moving it elsewhere, it needs to remain as a public. So because the three of you were present, this serves as a quorum for the property use committee.
For,
Regardless, you serve as a quorum, and so you can't meet privately without having it be a public piece of the meeting.
it has
So
to be,
it's-
you know, we
so
can't go somewhere
all
else. We
means,
have to do
finish,
this and it
and we
has to
will
be public.
proceed
And
after.
anytime we meet, it has to be public. And I think that meeting on election day, I think 5:30 will be impossible. But that's the next 2 weeks.
well, let's go ahead with the 21st and forget it.
Well, we'll
If
go
we
ahead
can-
with the, yeah, we go ahead with the 21st and we can always ask people to leave. After they've all had their say, people can leave and then we can sit here and talk.
The only problem is, I think we need to have a cohesive presentation to the public.
We can't have people leave. So in Johnson property, when we discussed them amongst ourselves as the board, the public was here and had to be here. But we just discussed here, they just couldn't
But
interject.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that we need to have a cohesive presentation to the public.
No,
No?
no,
We'll just sit here?
no, that's not until December 19th. We aren't gonna make a presentation to the public. The public's invited and the online's invited. So anybody who wants to say something about what we're doing can come and say something about it.
So we won't even make a statement.
No, not
Oh,
then. No,
we'll just-
not
okay.
until the end. And I will write a written report. And
Well, we-
send it to you, and then once we've had a written report of our December 19th meeting,
Our November 19th meeting,
no, December
December
19th,
19th.
our last meeting, that we will make a written report to give to the selectmen.
And that's when we would.
So
come
that's
in.
sort of
And
not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it is an introductory to the public.
we don't have to present anything. If they have questions or anything, it's, from my understanding, it's their responsibility to do the research and do the looking. They're just coming forth, like the Recreation Commission, Jim Kelleher, and speaking on their behalf. So then that's their responsibility, I guess.
That's the way I understand it. We don't have to make a presentation to them. If they ask us questions, we need to be careful about our answers. Really, really careful about our answers.
it's just another part of the information gathering. It's just like we did with the abutters, this is just opening up to
Okay,
beyond the abutters. And my guess is, I may be wrong, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of people here for it.
I don't think there will
I
either.
think it'll just be same old regulars.
I think it will be, so that way that'll give us a chance to do some more discussion amongst us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking?
Cause we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do. We wanna do it right.
Exactly.
But I still would like to get Upper Valley Land Trust here at some point in time.
So did they refuse to come or did?
No, I think they're
We-
just not interested.
We sent 2 different emails inviting and we heard nothing back.
I think they're just not interested. My land in Haverhill, I put in the land trust. And they've got a lot of land in the land trust and they're getting more every year. And I don't think that this piece would be suitable for the land trust anyway. So if they don't wanna come and say, we don't want it, we can assume since they didn't come that they don't want it.
Well, did you reach out to him, Kevin? Were you the one that reached out to him?
I did the land trust. I did conservation.
Okay, so I think we should still try to get them, myself.
I don't think they want us. I
Well,
don't think they want to come.
Yeah,
We need to have a conversation.
But we don't know that for sure.
We need to find out why they don't think it's interesting to them.
But
Or have
we
a
don't
conversation.
even know that. All we know is.
Well,
that
I can
they-
call Jason Gerard and say, how come you don't want to come? I can do that.
Yeah, if you can reach out to them and just find out if they are interested, they may be, maybe they just didn't have anybody available to come to the meeting today.
Or maybe it was just, too short notice.
But the reason
Well-
I'd like to have that is that, if we decide for the whole 100 acres to be developed, and now we learned that the recreation committee doesn't have any money to develop it, we donate it to the Upper Valley Land Trust. I'd like to hear what they say, what they would do to develop it. And they may very well have the money to do that, to
No,
develop.
they don't develop, no,
They don't develop trails, they don't build
No,
trails.
they're
and-
just
no, they don't.
placeholders.
They're placeholders. They keep the land from being developed. That's what they do. And they have some trails and they have a garden and they give produce to people that need it. Working with Cedar Circle. But mostly their job is to keep the land as it is.
What was your guys' thing on October 30 minutes?
Say that again?
What was the decision on October 30 minutes?
I would like it to be in the minutes that I did not get in, that I tried to get into the meeting that was blocked. Please.
Okay, I will add that.
What else do we need to do?
We need to, approve the minutes.
Yeah, I need a vote to approve the minutes of October 3rd. All in favor? Anybody opposed? You opposed, Kevin?
No,
And you're gonna reach out to Upper Valley Land Trust. I mean, I wanna go through this. This is their annual report. Just
Yeah,
see-
well, I put my way in the land trust years ago. And Steve Campbell and I walked it a lot of times.
Yeah, cause I was under the impression that they developed the land. with-
No.
with trails and
No,
stuff.
No, they just hold it. It's,
They don't develop.
they don't
it.
even,
Really?
yeah.
Really, yeah. What it does is what their job is to protect the land. That's all they do, is keep it from being developed.
You should start your meeting.
They have a weekly, Friday thing where they talk about conservation and birds and things like that, that you can get online, which is a lot of fun, but the recreation committee is sitting here
I know. it's
very patiently, so the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Got one. Barbara moved to adjourn.
Second.
No, it doesn't need a second. All in favor?
I
We, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Quick question for any plans for pickleball courts?
No.
No.
He's not talking about Enfield right now. Are you?
$300,000.
What's that? I'm talking about infield.
You talking about Enfield? I thought you were talking about.
Make friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That
How
was
is that
actually one of
cool?
my thought, like, when we were talking about other areas, that was one of the first things, cause I'm like, I know Enfield residents have asked for pickleball courts, but like, there's this whole other piece of trying to get that, like, it's so. Yeah, if we
We-
can't even get pickleball courts to try to be, I can only imagine how difficult. it is
Playground
going to be.
And all I want is that pool in Enfield. I don't want it over there in
It
Hartford.
kind of goes along with what you were saying, though, to bring in,
Yeah, like it.
bring in business, you bring in people
Well,
for.
you're not going
Hey,
anywhere.
I live up the road from here. It only takes me 45 minutes.
You know,
I live right at the top of, not even the top. It takes me
Restaurants.
53 seconds to get from my house to here.